Guys, welcome to the Minsanity Podcast. My guest today is a person who's well known in the mineral community in a whole myriad of circumstances and interstices and backgrounds. Mark Mauthner is a photographer, a mineral collector, a former museum curator, a researcher, and an all-around awesome guy. Mark, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Mark, I think a lot of folks know you from your photography, which has been on the cover of magazines, it's been in calendars, it's been in all different aspects of the mineral world. But maybe not as many people know that you are basically a lifelong mineral collector. You're from Western Canada. You've worked in all aspects of the mineral world. Tell me a little bit about growing up in Western Canada and what some of your early memories are with minerals and mineral collecting.
I was born in the Yukon in a mining camp.
Okay, wow.
Actually born in a hospital 50 miles
Yep.
away, but or 50 kilometers away.
Yep.
But in the United Kena Hill Mine Camp in the Yukon, actually that is famous for the Husky Mine.
Husky Mine polybasites, they're some of my favorites.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I have a polybasite in my collection from my dad. However, that comes from the Hector Calumet mine, which people don't realize that they did occur. I'm right now writing an article actually on the entire camp.
So backing up for a second, how did you come to be born in such a random place? I assume your parents were in the mining industry or just like being in the middle of nowhere?
Oh my God, the story about how my parents ended up there is another whole interview.
Okay.
But it's a fantastic story. It really should be written
Okay, well let's stick with how it pertains to your birth.
Yeah. Well, my mother had come from Germany to marry my dad. 9 months later, there I was.
Yep.
So, and my dad happened to work as a miner with United Kena Hill Mines.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, he was mostly in the Hector Calumet, but worked in a few of the other mines.
So you have mining in your blood.
Yeah, in the summers. Not only that, they ran. They had a gold washing operation on Mayo Lake on Steep Creek.
Okay, wow, doing some placer gold mining.
Yeah, and actually that's where I could say I started embryonic life.
Okay. So before you had thoughts, you were thinking, gold,
Yeah.
Okay, cool, wow.
So.
Okay, so you were born, and then you didn't stay in the Yukon?
No, we, I think I was 2 or 3 years old. Dad did some moving around, but we ended up in the Rocky Mountains of British Columbia.
Okay.
Dad ended up with a job at the Mineral King mine.
Oh, okay.
Which is another lead zinc silver mine, and that's where I spent my school days.
Okay, gotcha.
Like from kindergarten on through grade 12.
Okay, wow. Okay, so growing up in the mountains, obviously mining family, mineral rich part of the world. Did you sort of have an early fascination with minerals, or were they just things that Dad mined and turned into money?
No, actually. I started as an infant. My mother says that I was literally on the beach, on the blanket. I would line up rocks.
Okay.
Or that or crawling towards the water.
Yeah. But there were rocks
head
involved.
Me off.
Yeah.
But I actually had a collection in a box at the age of 3.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the earliest specimen that I have recorded, that I still have, that is self-collected, and I can prove it because there's a slide that has the date on it from the people that printed the slide.
Yep.
I collected at the age of 4.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and there's a picture of me with my little hat on, sitting in the quarry.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what kind of opportunities did you have growing up in kind of central Western BC in the mountains, in an area that I presume was, somewhat rural? Was there a mineral community? Was it just you going out and collecting and exploring, or what was that like?
It was a solo effort. I mean, my parents gave me a geology hammer when I was it was the 5th birthday.
Okay.
So I had an early interest, and my parents promoted that.
Yep.
And we did a lot of hiking as a family, and a lot of the roads in the Rocky Mountains and the Purcell Mountains lead to old mines.
Yep.
So, there was that, I had that.
Okay, so it was a bit of a family activity.
No,
Okay.
I just had to run off.
Okay.
I was the one that
get lost and go find some rocks. Yeah. Okay.
Something along those lines, but
yep. Okay.
Yeah, and oddly enough, I never really met another collector until I was
interesting. Wow.
in Vancouver.
Okay.
at the age of 24. So
Wow,
I'd collected
okay.
for 20 years without ever really getting to know mineral collecting as an industry.
But
But the funny thing is, when I was 15, I met Dossi Vancine on a bus from Banff, Alberta to Radium Hot Springs.
Okay.
He was a heli-ski guide.
Wow.
And he was telling me, "Oh, what do you do?" I says, "I sell minerals." Really? Somebody buys minerals?
Common question.
Yeah. He says, "Yeah, in Tucson.
Yeah.
There's a guy in Tucson that buys rocks." Just like, I had no clue.
Wow.
Yeah, and then when I was 24, that's when everything sort of started.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I went to a trip to Butte, Montana.
Okay.
And then I moved all within a year, I moved to Vancouver.
Okay, wow.
And within that year, I was working at the museum.
Wow, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about, so you were going to school basically K through 12 in central BC in the mountains, and then you went to Vancouver for university then, or?
No, I did my first degree in southern Alberta in Lethbridge.
Okay. Yeah.
It was actually a degree in modern languages and political science.
Oh, wow, okay. So despite having the passion for rocks, you decided to go a different direction in
in
college.
high school, I kind of changed direction. I got really intrigued with the idea of working in external affairs.
Okay.
So that's why
with
modern languages and political
or
science.
Or?
No, I wanted to be a courier for the government. I wanted to be a spy.
Okay, neat. All right.
Saying this publicly now, that's totally blown that cover.
Yeah.
No, actually, I don't think I would have made a good spy.
Mineral spy. Anyways, okay, so you got into humanities and that was your initial degree.
At the same time, I was digging out calcite crystals down below the university, right along the Old Man River. And,
okay, cool.
And found these neat. There was a coal mine that had burned, and there was a shale above it that was all red and burned.
Okay.
But it had cracks and had these black little crystals in all the cracks.
Okay.
And it wasn't until years later that I went back to UBC and I pulled that specimen out. It was my very first X-ray analysis.
Oh, wow.
Hematite. Cool. And I put the story together, you know?
Yeah.
Diagenetic pyrite burning in the coal.
Yep, exactly.
Fumes. Iron oxide crystallizing
precipitation of calcite with hematite. Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, that was cool.
That is very cool.
Anyway.
So UBC. So you mentioned around the age of 24. So you came to Vancouver
in '88.
Okay.
I moved from Lethbridge to Vancouver. I was working in the hotel industry at the time, and I transferred.
Gotcha.
But the first thing I absolutely did, the very first Wednesday I was there, I looked in the yellow pages. Mm-hmm. They had those then.
Yeah.
Mineral Museum, UBC.
Yep.
It was only open Wednesdays.
Okay.
And I was there every Wednesday.
Wow.
Got to know the curator, Joe Nagel.
Okay.
And it was, I arrived there on the 5th of February. In March, I met Rob Woodside, and he introduced me to the mineral collector group.
I was about to ask you when you met Rob, because Rob is my when I think of Vancouver mineral collecting, I think of Rob Woodside, and I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, and then there was a close group of friends there, particularly Lloyd Twaits, Ty Balak, who's fortunately passed away now.
Okay.
Art Sorgaroli.
Yeah, he was another major collector.
And these all became my close friends.
Yeah.
And later, a couple of months later, I said, what am I doing? The first thing I ever wanted to be was a geologist, age 5.
Yeah.
First reasonable thing I wanted to be. I decided to go back to school.
Okay.
And this time geology.
Yeah.
And I applied. And as soon as I got accepted, it was the guy that interviewed me, Carl Giovanella. He allowed me then entrance to the program. Basically said, well, I don't know, I'll give this guy to Christmas.
Yeah. Provisional. Let's see if he can hack it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it all worked out. But I marched straight over to Joe's office and I said, hey, listen, I just signed up for UBC, just got accepted, and do you need a volunteer? Mm-hmm. And I just typical Joe style. He's sitting there working on his computer while I was talking to him, and he stopped, looked up, says, no, I'm going to hire you.
Wow.
Because he knew me by that time.
Yeah, exactly.
I was there every Wednesday.
Yeah, you were the guy.
I was there like a bad smell.
Yeah. So. Wow, okay.
And so a week before I started my geology program, I actually was working in the museum.
Fantastic.
And my first day of work was the BC Gem Show.
Wow.
Which, I'd never been to something like this.
Yeah.
This was just like blown away by this whole world.
Yeah, all these dealers and collectors.
Yeah, look at that. Wow. People actually do buy and sell minerals.
Yeah, wow. So getting involved with Joe and working at the museum, what kind of stuff were you doing?
the first thing he did was leave me alone.
Okay.
He took off for the Denver show because this was September.
Yeah.
And the BC Museums Association had a week-long conference at the same time. So they're back-to-back, so 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He left me some vague instructions. There was an elderly, one of the professor's wives, emeritus professor's wives, was there working on fossils, and I was supposed to help her and stuff. But, you know, being a bit of a self-starter, I just sort of walked in the museum office. I mean, I was like, there was a mess.
Of course, like
there was
most
stuff
museums.
piled all over. Joe was by himself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And so I just sort of said, you know, this needs to be organized.
Yeah.
So I set up tables, a length of tables, and while Joe was gone, I pulled stuff out and I put it all into piles.
Okay.
I said I found minerals, I found stuff that was in flats.
You're probably sorting stuff that hadn't been sorted in years.
Exactly.
Wow.
You know, I mean, Joe was a really innovative guy, and always he preferred to get from one project to the next and the next. And a lot of stuff sort of fell by the wayside.
Of
you know,
course.
organizational, whatever, cleanup stuff.
Sure.
Which, no problem. I did that. And I just remember when Joe came in, I was already there. And, hey, good morning, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me, little briefcase in his hand, looked around, and sort of, well, here's what I've been doing. And I explained it to him in all little piles. And he looked at us, okay. And he just marched straight on by.
Wow.
And he said, file it, catalog it, deal with it. Those are the three answers.
Boom, you're a curator.
And deal with it meant
Yeah.
I could throw it away.
Wow.
I could burn it.
Yeah.
If it was paper.
Sure.
I could keep it.
You had discretion.
I had discretion.
Wow.
So the geological club.
Okay.
Okay, the Dawson Club for geology students. They benefited. I benefited. This group of mineralogy, mineral collectors that I became a part of.
Right.
They loved it when I showed up at the meetings and look what I got from Joe.
Well, and I bet it was a hell of a learning experience, because up until that time, your main experience with minerals had probably been self-collected stuff in central BC and stuff that, you know, local people had, and now you're seeing a whole world of minerals.
Yeah, that and the books that I had, like Johnson Kankas's books and a couple of other things that I got from my dad, because he was a butcher by trade, but he learned to become a geologist, and so he had a good library.
Yep.
And I did end up going to Butte to the museum and the Calgary Museum. Those are two museums I'd seen.
Okay, so you'd had a little exposure to sort of worldwide minerals.
Because at that BC Gem show, we were standing behind the case, and Joe sort of asked me, he says, so, Mark, looking at the minerals in this case, and we're looking at from the back, so I couldn't see the labels.
Yeah.
It says, how many of these do you think you identify?
Yeah.
And I said, maybe 80%.
Yeah.
Localities, maybe 50, 60%. And he was just like, okay. And he said, let's try it. Well,
wow.
I think I made one mistake.
Wow. Fantastic. Yeah.
And that was, you know, there's maybe 40, 50 specimens in there.
Yeah. And that's a great feeling. And that mirrors my experience in high school in my early days as well, learning through doing and learning how to site ID localities and site ID species. I think that's a skill now that I wouldn't say it's going by the wayside, but it's supremely valuable and important.
It is.
And the emphasis is not always on that. And I think that that's not something that, I wouldn't say it's not that I see so much of it. It's just that I'm very grateful to have those skills, and I'm sure you and your experience, those skills were invaluable, being able to do that.
Yeah, actually, that's something that somehow I was blessed with is being able to identify stuff. And when I was younger, I had a near photographic memory.
Yeah.
Can't say that now. I can't even remember why I went into a bathroom.
You're a photographer now, so you don't need a photographic memory. The photos are the memory.
Yeah, I just need to remember where I put the photos.
Yeah.
No, I am a curator and I have a very organized.
Okay, so that was sort of your entree into the curatorial world. So
it just launched. But the thing is, Joe was the best mentor I could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that I truly miss. He was an exceptional person, and from day one, he introduced me as not somebody that worked for him, as somebody that worked with him.
As a colleague. As a professional
Months later, he walked into the front office where the administrative staff of the department, and he had to go away for something. And he sat down. He says, I want you all to get to know Mark, because he's me when I'm not here.
Wow. Yeah.
holy cow.
Yeah, that's a hell of an endorsement.
Yeah, and so, but the thing is, and we always talked every single day. I mean, I was paid as a curatorial assistant, same as like a TA.
Sure. Yep.
It's a sort of a minimal amount of money,
sort
and
of
for 12 hours a week, I worked on the average 40 to 50 hours a week.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So you were basically a volunteer.
And I worked in, like I was doing courses.
Yeah.
But most of the staff got to know me as an employee rather than a student. They were surprised when I showed up in their class and said, "Hi, I'm here."
Yeah. That's great. Wow, so Joe really took you under his wing, and then...
He did. I learned an awful lot.
Yeah, wow. So then you finished at UBC. What was next for you after that?
Well, I finished my bachelor's.
Yep.
Then I became full-time collection shop manager in the museum. We created that position, and we really developed the museum in those 4 years. We did a lot of projects. Yeah. We got a huge donation of specimens that produced a sale that gave us all kinds of money.
Wow.
And
So I have to ask, when did that amazing rhodochrosite? Because when I think of the UBC Mineral Museum, I think of that amazing Sweet Home rhodo that you guys have. When did that come to the museum?
That wasn't the. That was later. That was the Pacific Mineral Museum.
Okay, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm getting mixed up.
It's there.
Here.
It's back at UBC.
I see. Okay, I see. So that was later. Okay.
Yeah, that was later.
Okay, but it sounds like you really were able to develop the collection with Joe during that time. Then.
Yeah, I think with two of us going absolutely gung ho, we just managed an awful lot in 7 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. In 1995, in the fall, the Dean of Science decided he didn't want to have any of the 5 museums, science museums that were on campus, and he literally just shut them down.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were actually bringing money into the department.
Wow.
And he just didn't feel that there was a place for museums.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
On campus. So in '95, Joe was gone.
I see.
October, and I was still finishing my master's at that point.
I see. Okay.
So I was collection shop manager for a year, and then I got this opportunity to do a master's on pegmatites.
Okay. Wow.
So I went and did that, and continued to work in the museum, especially as a TA.
Yeah. Which pegmatites were you working with? What was the focus?
The Little Nahanni pegmatites up in the Northwest Territories. They're lithium spodumene.
I was going to say these are some of the
spodumene type of.
These are some of the only pegmatites in Canada that actually have gem tourmaline and mirrolitic pockets, correct? Or
no?
Or am I thinking of? Okay, I know Brad Wilson's done some poking around up
there. That's
a different
region,
spot.
But I'm the one that found those.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm tapping myself on the back. But
no, good.
While we were doing research for Little Nahanni, we were checking out other pegmatites in the area.
Okay.
And that's when we went over to the O'Grady batholith, and we were there for 5 days.
Okay.
And it was kind of funny because there was this little bit of tension going on in the camp because I was out collecting apparently. So, and they would all be back in camp for their scotch at 5 o'clock. And why wasn't I there? Why wasn't I being a team person and making food? Well, because you paid $100,000 to be out here.
Yeah.
And
you're in the bush and a helicopter access. Might as well go collect some rocks.
We're supposed to be looking for stuff.
Yeah.
So on the very last night we were there, I found lepidolite.
Okay.
I found pink albites.
Wow.
On microcline, Amazonite.
Just in outcrop.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just in outcrop. I just sitting there.
Yeah.
And I walked back down to camp and I said, "So Scott, what would you Scott Ursett?
Scott Ursett. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, "What would you say if I told you there was lithium in these pegmatites?" And he said, "That's impossible.
Yeah.
These are NYF. Blah blah blah.
There's no LCT pegs.
Here. There's nothing here." And so I said, "Well, that's lepidolite. That's elbite tourmaline."
Yep.
And she's like,
eyes probably popped out.
They absolutely did. He nearly dropped his scotch. Wow. He was sitting there in the chair and he nearly dropped his scotch.
Wow.
And he got very interested.
Yeah, cool.
And so next day, we were sitting there breaking down camp waiting for the helicopter.
Right.
And he went back up to the mountain to
visit the spot. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic.
But that was a cool find.
That's a very cool master's project too, to get to work in an area like that. And
unfortunately, that wasn't my master's project. Sure. The other one was.
Yeah, that was serendipity.
I really got in on this one. That was cool. cool. So that was the beginning of mixed NYF LCT pegmatites.
Yeah, interesting. Well, and Scott Ursett was one of the pioneers of the classification system. Him and Peter Cherney, obviously
Correct.
with
Yeah.
establishing all of this. So
No.
Wow.
No, I would have to say Scott was the brains behind.
Was he? Okay.
Me finishing that program and everything I learned there. So I owe him a lot there.
Yeah, that's great. So you finished your master's. You've been at the museum. The museum, unfortunately, it sounds like, wasn't in a great place with the university. So what was
I was there. I was the person that shut it down.
Okay, 95, you shut it down.
Yeah. So I was there until January of 96, and so I had a couple, because I was defending as well at the same time. And so Joe and I had planned that we took all the high-end specimens or what there was in the collection. We put them in 2 cabinets so that they would be all safe, clustered together. Yeah. So that if anything happened, somebody would know those 2 cabinets are the ones with the best stuff.
The special ones.
Because there's 12,000 specimens in the collection. Sure. And a lot of it was ore samples.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So then you departed Vancouver after that, or?
No, I got a job. In fact, I was going to take some time off and go travel and do a few things. Told my mom I'm coming home for a month. Yeah. And that was Friday. Saturday, I got a call from Michelle Robinson. And she said, do you want to work on a geology crew? And I went, it's a ground roots operation. It's a diamond company, but they own the ground for 5 years. They've flown it for diamonds. Okay. Nothing there. Okay. But they're looking for absolutely anything else.
Interesting.
Anything we could find.
And this is up in northern Canada in the bush.
In the tundra, right?
In the tundra, wow.
Yeah, now called Nunavut, where all the diamond camps are, right up to the Arctic Ocean. Okay. And so I said, when do I start? She said, Monday.
Nice. So now you're a field geo, okay.
Yeah, okay, field geologist. And of course you're heading up mineral section.
Yeah.
Because I kind of had that reputation at the department already. Cool. So that's great. Okay, fine. Cool. So I started that, and we were given geophysics maps. Instead of looking for blue spots, we were looking for red spots. You know, kind of idea. I'm simplifying that. But,
okay, sure.
So we set up a program. And headed out for the season. Wow! And just started looking at everything. Wow! And we located targets. There were 4 head geologists in the beginning. Okay. And we then expanded to 10. Each one was an assistant. We ended up with a camp of about 30, and up to 3 helicopters and all over the place.
That's great. A budget and a license to go look for cool rocks and possible mineral deposits.
The budget was insane.
Yeah. Well, you guys in Canada are the leaders in the world of mineral exploration for sure, and it's probably a fun place to be in the business.
Yeah. I mean, that was an amazing summer. Wow. And so some neat finds. I think one of the coolest things that I found geologically, and it's not out there. Sure. It never became a paper or something. I mean, it's all Archean green schists and stuff up there. Everything's locked up
rocks,
tight.
Yeah, old.
And I found epithermal quartz veins with open pockets and banding.
Wow.
Amethyst banding.
Crazy.
That would be cool to revisit. Yeah. A copper moly deposit. Wow. Found that, like a little moly crystal that I literally banged out of the shoreline on the Arctic Ocean. Every 7th wave would wash over it.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I got a call while I'm standing there on the sat phone. Said, okay, Mark, do you want to be director of a new museum here in Vancouver? Wow. Sounds great. See you in September. Wow. Click. So and that's when I became director of the Pacific Mineral Museum.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, so tell me, you just said it was a new museum. Tell me a little bit about how
it didn't
that
exist.
Came to be and
so
what was
we created it.
Okay. Wow.
And we tried to negotiate with UBC to rebuild a museum there. Okay. We looked all over Vancouver for different venues down on Granville Island. And we ended up with a small heritage building across from the cruise ship terminal.
Oh, okay, wow.
In Vancouver.
So that's prime real estate there.
It was. And it took us a couple of years to get it up and running. But as we did so, that's when Bre-X happened. Oh, and I don't know if people know what that means, but there was a movie out there with Matthew McConaughey called Gold. Yeah. That movie the character is not a guy from Nevada. He's a guy from Calgary. Right. But the strangest things in that movie are probably the most true.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just finished reading the book by coincidence, and it's a fascinating story. And, I'm an exploration geo myself, even though I haven't worked in the industry for that much. But I know a lot of the local folks here in Denver in the exploration community who have told me, and I'm sure you would echo this, that really rocked the exploration world. It reset everybody's ideas and expectations, and it created some real turbulence in that business. And essentially, for those of you that don't know the story, the quick synopsis is that it was a massive salting and basically swindle that happened on a large scale involving hundreds of millions of dollars, basically promoting a gold deposit that didn't exist in New Guinea, I believe. Right? Indonesia.
Because the Suharto family.
Yeah, and Canada is the center of the junior mining, which is really the heart of the mining industry, at least for generating deposits. So I'm sure that was a big deal.
Because the museum's funding depended on the generosity in the industry.
Yeah,
we didn't have any government funding.
Wow.
Nothing.
Okay, I was about to ask what your funding model was. It was all basically junior companies.
It was meant to be self-sustaining.
I see.
And I had written a budget for to break even at 5.
Okay.
Which even for a normal for-profit business in Vancouver at the time was. Okay,
ambitious.
That's good. That's ambitious.
Yeah.
The way it actually went, the way it looked, first year was abysmal, because we started with $0 in the bank, and we were supposed to be funded. Again, our major contributors couldn't follow through with some of the promise that they had.
I see.
But understandably.
Yeah, of course.
But
they're just trying to stay afloat.
Yeah. Second year, that was down to less than a third of that deficit.
Wow.
We would have broken even in year 3.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I quit.
Okay.
And just the will wasn't there anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I moved to Houston.
I see. Okay. Well, that was going to be my next question of what your path was to Houston, because I think a lot of folks know you from your involvement with the Houston Museum. And the Houston Museum is a really special museum, not only because it has a world-class mineral collection, but because I think their model of how they run the museum and how they approach curation and minerals is really unique. So when you were there, was it Joel that hired you? Was it before?
Actually, I was there basically quitting.
Okay.
We just had a major gold exhibit at the Pacific Mineral Museum, which actually at the time was one of the largest gold exhibits ever done.
No kidding! Wow.
And more at least comprehensive in terms of
wow.
Everything about gold.
Yeah, wow. And I'm sure that brought in a lot of public attention.
It did, but it wasn't enough to rescue the museum.
Sure.
Joel ended up talking to me and said, don't quit museums. Mm-hmm. Come work for me.
Wow, yeah. I can just imagine as a collector, that must have been such a treat. That collection is world-class, and Joel's ability, from what I know, of bringing in these world-class specimens is almost unparalleled in the museum world.
I would agree with that. Yeah, unparalleled.
Yeah.
So
the vision he has and the understanding he has of specimens, and and you're obviously coming into that role, you're bringing your own knowledge and your own experience of what's a great specimen, what's worth pursuing.
Those were some fun years. I really enjoyed working there.
That's neat.
But then that had its end, and I ended up with Bob Downs working at the Rough Lab.
Well, and Bob is
I moved to Phoenix.
Fellow Vancouverite. Did you know Bob back in his Vancouver days? Or?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Maybe that's a separate podcast. But...
Well, actually, no. Bob and I had some great fun. And we were roommates at the Tucson show many, many moons ago while he was still a PhD student.
Yeah, wow.
And his father used to dig for gold in the Yukon, just like my parents.
No kidding. Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
No, Bob and I go way back.
I figured you must, because Bob is a fellow BC native, and very bright, very sharp. Obviously, he's had a great career in
He's one of the 2 brightest people I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's under certain influences, he and Rob is one of the others.
Rob is amazing too. Woodside. Yeah, he's amazing.
Under certain influences, we were sitting there in one of our mineral meetings in Vancouver, and they started talking about mapping electron flow and trying to map it like you do. And I was thinking, hey, I know something about groundwater mapping, and how you get flow and you get nodes where where water stops flowing, and where electrons stop flowing. That's where you have a bond.
Things deposit. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God,
Yep.
I can't believe what's happening.
Yep.
These are sort of talking about it completely under the influence. And
Yeah.
a year later, that's a paper somewhere.
There you go. Yeah, that's a scientific objective. It's a project.
It's like the creativity
Wow.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. So I do want to hear more about the rough project and your work with Bob. But something I want to ask you first is a lot of folks know you principally for your work as a photographer and as one of the leading mineral photographers out there for many decades. What led you into photography, and what made you think you might want to pursue mineral photography?
Photography, after minerals, is my second passion.
Okay.
I got my first camera when I was 6 years old. A little brownie 2x2, making slides. I wish I still had some of those slides. I don't. But I even took pictures of rocks sitting on on my playhouse, there's a playhouse that my grandfather built from Austria when he came to visit. But I had ore samples sitting out in front of it. And one of those slides was actually of those malachite samples.
Oh, wow.
I wish I still had that. Anyway, so I bought my first SLR when I was 13 on for a trip to Morocco.
So photography was as early as minerals as far as
it was just that when I left the GIA, I was booted out along with 196 other people after the 2008 crisis.
I see, yeah.
You know, I was like, what do I do? I said, I'm not going back to museums.
Sure, been there, done that.
Yeah. And I think by that point, I'd pretty much done everything you can do, like blockbuster exhibits. In a museum, I was director of a museum.
Yeah, exactly. You're thinking, what's next?
They had just found a 49er pocket, and I got right in on that because I got heard about it. I was invited up to the mine.
Wow.
And from that day, I was there every week.
Wow.
And I became one of the crew.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so there was 7 of us, and I said, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
And at that time we were finding stuff, and so my take in the whole thing was that I did sales for the mine as well as digging.
Yep. So you were a mineral dealer a little bit on the side.
Yeah, and so I was getting stuff to market, and I got a percentage of that, whereas the other miners got a percentage of what came out of the ground.
Sure. Yeah.
So
gotcha.
that was fun. And then somebody said, "Listen, you do okay photography. Why don't you see if somebody will pay you to do that?"
Okay.
And now Jeff is one of my better buddies in this whole business. And I've known him since 1989.
Figured you guys go way back.
Yeah. And I didn't want to go in on his game.
Sure, but there's a lot of rocks in the world and not many photographers.
Yeah, but at the time, anyway, I was more about helping him get into digital photography.
I see, okay. This was around the time of the digital photography revolution.
I had already started in 2004 with that.
I see.
And he was getting into it around 2007, I think, when he started. And so I was more interested in helping him than really starting my own business. Would have been actually kind of cool to do the business together, but no, I then decided, okay, I'm going to take contracts. I worked for auction houses.
Oh, okay, wow.
Doing specialty projects.
I see.
And that's where I built up my clientele.
Helping prepare
and
catalogs.
And a few private clients, but
I see.
That's why it wasn't at first hugely out there with the mineral photography.
And you stayed in Southern California when you were doing that,
Although I was hardly ever there.
Sure. Lots of traveling, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think in 2015 was the last year I did my tax with a full year that I was in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I came up with less than 2 months worth of days that I was at home.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So you were shooting a lot of rocks then and working with the auction companies, working with some collectors, it sounds like, working with some dealers.
And I did other consulting work as well.
Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. How would you say it sounds like you had a kind of an interesting opportunity because you were an avid photographer growing up and had been shooting on film and were familiar with SLRs and the technical side of minerals from a younger age. But then I think you were smart in that you jumped on the digital bandwagon pretty early on. Was that important, would you say, as far as your evolution of mineral photography, getting on the digital bandwagon pretty early?
Not really. I started mineral photography with slides.
Okay.
And actually even prints before that.
Okay.
When I bought one of my newer cameras in 1986, I was still in Lethbridge at that point.
Yep.
And started trying. I don't want to show anybody those pictures.
But those will be on the website. Just kidding.
Actually, what the heck, But with the digital transformation happened, Joe Nagel, again, he was a real proponent of using technology to be more productive.
Yeah.
And it it wasn't in the sense of, okay, let's get more done every day so we can get more and more and more and more. Mm-hmm. No, get done what you need to faster so that you have extra time in the hot tub.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, be productive and go enjoy life. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So that focus on
But the digital thing. So I had this gearing from Joe to accept the technology, and to see where it could take you. And so I bought my first full frame SLR in 2004.
Okay.
And I think since then I hardly ever shot anything on slides.
I see. Yep.
Yeah, maybe for about another year or so.
Yep.
There was a couple of articles in Rocks and Minerals I did some slides for. But,
gotcha.
Yeah. But after that, no, I just went strictly
exclusively digital. Yep.
And there were some stumbling things, you find things like, the color spaces was a bit of an issue at first. I went with the biggest and best. I figured you can always go down.
Yeah, exactly.
But the biggest and best doesn't print well.
I see.
Yeah, because the devices were not
gotcha.
good for that. But actually, I didn't do that for very long.
Yeah. What are a few favorite memories, if you wouldn't mind sharing a story or two of photography jobs or?
Well, there's an X-rated one.
Good, bad, ugly.
No, but
you can beep out names if you want.
You're talking about photography.
It's just working as a photographer. A few fun memories of special specimens you've handled, jobs you've done, places you've traveled for mineral photography.
I think working in the Houston Museum and with some of those, I wasn't photography, but that was some of the.
Oh my gosh!
The fun stuff.
You can't ask for better minerals than that.
No. I mean,
yeah.
Like for instance, one of the HAMS members. I was a founding member of HAMS.
Oh wow, neat.
He asked me if his son could shadow me for a day working at the museum, and his dad ended up green that afternoon because that evening when his son came home and says, "Oh yeah, we opened up the cases and I got to hold that big diamond."
Yeah, wow.
Which is actually really cool because the reason I did that is I said, "Here, hold this thing in your hand."
Yep.
It was what's happening, and he says, "Well," I said, "Is it getting warmer?" He says, "No, it's getting colder."
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, that diamond crystal is big enough."
Thermal conductivity.
Conductivity.
There's a
that's
science
right.
lesson there.
It's sucking the heat right out of your hand.
It's big and impressive and valuable, but it also is a great science lesson. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's why we did that.
Yeah.
I don't know, favorite stories. It's like when people say, "Do I have a favorite mineral?" I don't. Like I have a real history with gold.
Sure. Yeah.
But to sort of to paraphrase Will Rogers.
Yeah.
I don't think I've met a mineral I didn't like. And that can be a $50,000 or a $5 million mineral these days, or it could be a 50-cent mineral that's just
that's
interesting.
The thing. And as a photographer, I've spoken with Jeff about this and a few other folks. I think you have a unique access into the world of minerals because people bring you things they're excited about, they think are great, they think are cool, and then you get to experience that through the camera and through handling and working with these specimens.
I just shot some pieces the other day, which they were very cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to keep it a secret.
That's okay. We understand.
The world will know about them eventually.
Yeah. And that's fun. And, it's like I brought you some of my new Swedish Strenggeist to shoot during Tucson.
That was another cool thing.
And that was fun to share with you because you're a real mineral guy and you can appreciate how good and rare those are. And it's fun to get the photos, but it's also fun to be like, hey, Mark, look at these really cool specimens that just came out of the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truck driver sees them from
exactly
from
his light at night jumps out and grabs a couple chunks of iron ore that have the world's best Strenggeist in them. It's cool. Pretty fun.
I remember when Joel opened up the door. Houston was always good for a couple of surprises.
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
but
I bet.
When he says, "Mark, come here," okay, opens a box and there's the North Carolina emerald in it.
Oh my gosh! Wow. The iconic specimen.
Yeah. One of the first people to get to hold it.
And when you see it, you can never forget that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Columbia can go walk and take it.
Yeah, exactly. Look what we got.
It's only one, but
yeah.
It's killer.
That's really cool.
No, those were fun days.
Yeah.
The real memories are actually collecting.
Yeah. That field collecting.
Field collecting.
Getting out there. Yeah.
There's one, like one of my best friends, John Lindell.
Yep.
and I were up at the top of Vesper Peak.
Oh, Vesper Peak, yeah.
You know, and he sent me a photo afterwards of us. We were sitting there, hiked up there, killed our legs.
Oh yeah,
but
that's a gnarly hike.
Digging garnets and stuff, and you're sitting there on top of the mountain, and the sunset was just beautiful. We're sitting there. I don't drink beer, but I was drinking a beer that night.
Yep.
And just looking, it was one of the most amazing trips ever.
Yeah.
The phosphate locality up in the Yukon.
Oh yeah, Rapid Creek. Yeah, getting to go up there. Wow.
Yeah, actually, one of the guys that was there for pretty much 20 years or more, going every year.
Yeah.
He was actually sort of related to him.
Yeah.
Guy out of Calgary, and he invited me up on a collecting trip. That was just fantastic.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. World-class minerals in a wild location.
Yeah, it was a wild location. It was like coming home from camp at 2:30 in the morning, or not from camp, to camp.
Yeah, exactly.
From
still
digging.
Light out.
It's still light. Well, it was light 24 hours a day.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're sitting there and you're laying there in the tundra and watching around, and you're getting all soaked. And you think, oh, okay, I got blue underwear now because I've been sitting on blueberries. And all you have to do is roll over and suck one up with your lips.
Free food, That's great.
You know,
wow.
Odulate in one hand,
blueberries
in the other.
Grizzly bear in the distance. Yeah.
Did see a grizzly bear.
I've heard they like that area.
Well, we were on Crosscut Creek, and actually all of us, we kind of separated out. Oh, I got a fun collecting story.
Okay.
I got to tell you that one.
Okay.
But the other guys that were with us were from Quebec.
Okay.
Okay, one guy from France. And so I had a shotgun. The other guy that was with us, he had a shotgun, and my friend had a Winchester. And so like a normal rifle.
Yep.
And anyway, we're all sitting there. All of a sudden I turn around. They're all digging. And I see this grizzly bear charging up the canyon. This is like, unearthed. I came out snap. I came out with the French.
Oh my God.
I couldn't believe it.
But your Quebecois friends know,
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't have that. But
that's funny.
So that was funny. But the bear just sniffed us out.
Yeah.
Took off down and was back
curious.
up the other side of the canyon in 30 seconds.
Wow.
That would have taken us 30 minutes to walk up
there. Yeah. That gives you the idea of the power of this animal. Wow.
But further down that creek, there's an area called the waterfall site, and that's where the Brazilianites with the Colonites, the first Colonites came from.
Yeah.
And anyway, saw a little vein up there. This area had anates, and there was very few anates.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Tiny little micros. I said, I want some. But I see this vein up there. I tried 3 times climbing up there. I kept falling off the canyon wall.
Yeah.
Because it's really crumbly rock.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I said, one shot and nobody's going to come running. 3 shots, they're going to come running. So I just pulled out my shotgun, loaded it in a bear slug, and I shot the vein. And it was raining rocks. That was a stupid idea.
Collecting by shotgun, I love it.
Yeah, and then I thought, okay, well, that's gone. And then I looked around and saw black shale, but all the little bits of white quartz vein were all laying around. So I just, thank you, and I tripled the world's supply of Rapid Creek anates.
I love it. New collecting method.
Yeah,
that's great. So these days you've been in Austria, in Graz, Austria, and tell folks how you ended up in Austria and what you're doing these days. Okay, I see the ring.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
I went there for personal reasons.
I
kind of dropped my entire career, everything, my whole life in California, to go and start over.
Is your wife Austrian or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we met when I was 17.
Wow, fantastic.
There.
Okay, rekindled.
Yeah, because I have family there.
I see.
Right.
You said your father German and then grandfather Austrian.
Father's Austrian.
I see.
And my mother's German.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of coming back to the homeland.
I did.
Yeah.
Exactly. I went back to where my dad came from.
Okay. Wow.
So and slowly last year and a half it's really been picking up. So I just started writing articles, doing a few more things, getting involved in the mineral business again.
You're here in Denver working with the Munich show folks. And
Yeah.
Great.
Doing the curating the special exhibit in Munich this year.
In Munich, fantastic.
Yeah, it's actually going to be really cool.
Great. So folks can expect to see you in Munich then at the show.
Absolutely.
Super.
Yeah.
And Mark, are you going to be offering your photography services in Tucson again this year with Emmanuel?
Yeah, last couple of years I've been doing photography as part of the Nimrel Min Lab.
Yep.
Yeah, we decided we'd offer photographic services, and I do those services
Yep.
in Tucson.
Yep.
And then, but I'll be at the Munich show. I was in Saint Marie this year.
Great.
But that's independent. Yeah.
Great. Well, Mark, thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
really
it has
enjoyed
been. It's been fun.
Yeah.